On the morning of January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded while blasting off from the Cape Canaveral Space Center, killing all 7 astronauts on board. It would later be determined that the disaster was caused by a faulty O-ring seal in the right solid rocket booster, which allowed for the hot gases of ignition to leak out of the side of the rocket, burning through the fuel tank and destroying the whole vehicle. It would also be found that the disaster could have been prevented in a variety of ways. The space shuttle, while highly popular for the spectacle it was, had a wealth of engineering, logistical, and economic problems. Designed to be a reusable spacecraft, it was developed as inexpensively as possible, with cost cuts at every turn. For example, boosters were powered by solid fuel rather than liquid fuel, because solid fuel was cheaper to develop, although more expensive to maintain. These boosters were divided into multiple segments, unlike a normal rocket which is all one piece, so transportation by train could be possible. The designers of the boosters, the Morton Thiokol Company, were located in Utah and not near any body of water. One-piece rockets delivered by sea were declined by NASA as Thiokol's proposal was the least expensive. To keep these rockets functional, rubber O-rings were placed between the booster segments. The heat of ignition would cause the rubber to expand and seal any gap that might exist between the segments. However, engineers at Morton Thiokol and NASA found that the O-rings did not function properly in colder air temperatures, as rubber doesn't expand as quickly when it is cold. This was causing leakage in the field joints, the space where the rocket sections met. The engineers, particularly Roger Beaujolais, a field joint expert at Morton Thiokol, repeatedly warned NASA and Thiokol management that this issue would lead to a disaster if it was not rectified. NASA management did little about the problem, as it could lead to the shuttle being grounded, something that was considered unacceptable due to the high development costs of the shuttle. NASA plans to make the money back by launching more and more shuttles on the backs of corporations, the military, the government, and foreign states wanting to send experiments and personnel into orbit. NASA also held a flawed line of thinking. If something didn't cause a disaster once, it wouldn't cause a disaster in the future. The flight in question, STS-51L, was the 25th in the history of the shuttle program. It was a special one. High school social studies teacher Krista McAuliffe was on board, designated to be the first ordinary citizen to fly in space. From orbit, she would teach 2 lessons on live television to children about space, hoping to inspire the new generation to become involved with science and space exploration. McAuliffe became a national celebrity after winning the Teacher in Space competition, a program started by President Reagan to boost public interest in the shuttle program, which had waned in recent years. The flight was delayed several times due to weather and mechanical problems. It was finally set for Tuesday, January 28th, which turned out to be an unusually frigid day in south-central Florida. The high temperature was predicted to be only 40 degrees Fahrenheit, with the launch window predicted to be somewhere in the 20s or 30s. The coldest previous shuttle launch took place at 53 degrees Fahrenheit, and there, serious faults with the O-rings were first noticed. Roger Beaujolais and the Thiokol engineers held a heated nighttime meeting with NASA management, where they attempted to stop the launch entirely. They believed that if the O-rings failed, the hot gases of ignition would blow by the field joint. If that happened, the flames could eat through the fuel tank and detonate it, This would all happen right as the boosters ignited, at around 0.6 of a second into the flight. NASA and Thiokol management overruled them, claiming their data was inconclusive. The next day, Challenger launched at 38 degrees Fahrenheit. The O-rings burned through, but a seal formed from molten aluminum infused with the rocket fuel, keeping the vehicle from exploding on the launch pad. However, a strong crosswind caused the metallic seal to shatter, allowing the flames to leak out of the bottom field joints on the right SRB. The flames burned through the SRB's fuel tank connector, setting it partially free, swinging it into the tank, which destroyed it. The cockpit broke free from the wreckage intact. 3 of the 7 emergency air packs equipped to the astronauts were activated, indicating that at least some of them survived the explosion. They would die upon hitting the water at over 200 miles per hour. The shuttle was grounded for 2 years after the disaster. The entire world mourned the loss of the crew, particularly Krista McAuliffe. Challenger's destruction was something of a loss of innocence for many children. They had watched it live on television while at school. They witnessed destruction alongside the whole world and could barely comprehend it. The Challenger tragedy was blamed on poor engineering design and poor management, but there is also evidence that political pressure may have played a role. In particular, there is a rumor that President Reagan was told about the cold temperature concerns, but ordered for Challenger to be launched anyway, as he himself was being pressured by TV networks to get the shuttle airborne. It is known that he instructed the chairman of the Presidential Commission investigating the disaster, William P. Rogers, to not embarrass NASA at any cost. Rogers tried his best to follow this, but the revelations regarding NASA's behavior would make that impossible, especially when renowned physicist and commission member Richard Feynman performed a brief experiment that displayed the effects of cold temperatures on rubber O-rings. Changes were made to the shuttle's field joints, including the addition of a 3rd O-ring seal alongside the 2 already present. Multiple NASA and Thiokol managers resigned, and the management structure of the shuttle program was upended. However, when the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated during re-entry in 2003, the investigation found that NASA reverted back to many of their lax safety procedures, including the flawed idea that something not causing a disaster once meant it couldn't cause disasters in the future. After another 2 years on the ground, the shuttle returned to service, but was retired in 2011 following the completion of the International Space Station. In 2024, NASA plans to launch Artemis II, with the objective of sending astronauts into the moon's orbit once again. One can only hope this time they've learned their lesson. The shuttle program is considered by many at NASA to be a complete failure, but the public still remembers it fondly for the incredible scenes it provided. It was a spectacle that no spacecraft has matched since, and may never match again. Perhaps none of them should.